Much like spitting into a thick wind, our hype for Xenoblade came right on back with a surprise release of the trailer and name drop and release date for Xenoblade Chronicles 3 Future Redeemed. Coming on the 25th of April, not too far away, we're like less than a week away. And we had a trailer, and last time I reacted to the trailer and went over it on stream, but today, had a chance to sleep on it, yeah, got a couple of Z's in, and now it's time, we're ready. I'm ready to break this trailer down some more for all of you, to rip at its very core, and you may not believe what I found within. So let's get right on into it. So what we're going to do initially is I'm going to establish a framework, you feel me? And then we're going to watch the trailer, I'm going to break it down scene by scene, almost frame by frame, to gather any information that we can out of this. So, the trailer though is largely broken up into two separate parts. This first half will largely deal with Matthew and A. It will also deal with other characters, but the focus most of the time will be on Matthew and A. The second half of the trailer is largely on Matthew's sister, Niall, and a little bit with A there thrown into the mix, but it's mostly on Niall and her story. So, with that framework, let's watch the first half of the trailer and break down what is in here. So, this is the destruction of the original city. This was a scene that was kind of glossed over in the original Xenoblade 3, where we know that to fully come into the ranks of Mobius, N was forced to go essentially by himself back to the city, the place he came from, and raze it to the ground. This is almost certainly a scene from his expedition there and that slaughter that he committed. And Matthew here calls out for Niall and Granddad. And he comes here finding N stabbing his granddad. I believe he's called Sensei in the Japanese dub, which would mean teacher. So the exact relationship between, let's call him Granddad and Matthew, is still a little bit obscured. It could just be Granddad in like a friendly sort of way, just because that's the role he took for Matthew, or he's actually the grandfather. But it is almost certain that the grandfather here, Granddad, was Noah's son from the memory flashback in Xenoblade 3. He is the picture. They even show it, which reinforces this idea for me. So they show us Noah here, Mio, holding the kid. I believe this kid is the granddad, and that Noah here obviously is N. So part of his initiation into Mobius was he had to throw away everything else that includes his own kid. The life he helped bring into this world, he now has to take out of it. So he, in order to preserve his relationship and eternity with Mio, kills his own kid. But something interesting happens here. This may be glossed over by quite a few people, but let's talk about this right on here. If you recall, normally, people don't have an afterimage. That's just like a rough rule of thumb for, how reality works. So, either this is a constraint of it being a flashback for Xenoblade 3, which I don't buy, or what I think is more likely is that the grandfather is channeling some kind of spell or some kind of ability. He's channeling it, which will cause an explosion. Also, peep the eyes being multicolored here. This one's far more bluish purple. This one's far more darker monotone. Or monochrome. Look, I'm not a specialist when it comes to identifying color. But he explodes here, which I don't believe is a property of Lucky 7, or Sword of the End. But this is also another scene that happens here. Matthew's running towards the explosion, and we cut over here. Right here. Now, there's two things going on here. One, we have who I assume to be Niall, Matthew's sister, standing in front of the people of the city, who seem to be ordinary and calm. They're not moving, they're not really panicking, they're just standing there. We have the explosion from the grandfather, assumedly, hurrying towards them, but we also have this giant ray of light ascending from this one point where all the city people are located. This could be their escape route, and this is some kind of spell that they were able to work out to at least protect or save some denizens of the city. We also know, as part of Niall's backstory, that it is at this point in the city's destruction that she vanishes. Matthew loses contact with Niall, doesn't know where she ends up going. This could be the reason why. It's just she's caught up in this like transportation spell. Now you can notice that the explosion rushes towards her, and we're quickly blinded by light. It comes out here. We have this explosion emanating out from this point now, as if everything was being sucked in. Let's watch that again. Boom, and now it's coming back out. That destroys the city, but assumedly, probably the people of the city, or at least those who were standing there, realizing, were able to survive. So she may have absorbed some of the blast and then ricocheted back out. That may be what happened here, or the transportation spell also had an explosion effect attached to it. Now we hard cut to some point, assumedly in the future, with Matthew here, who has a scar on his eyebrow. And this is one of the characters that I'm most interested in when it comes to the DLC. There's two characters I'm really fascinated by. This is the first one, A, who, by the way, has the Ontos core crystal as an earring, who also has hair very similar, at least in color, to Alvis from Xenoblade 1, who we'll see later on as well, which leads me to believe that there's some kind of connection between A and Alvis. I would go a step further and say I think A could be a reincarnation of Alvis. Now, we know that the Aegises can take multiple different forms because we have Numa, who was Mithra and Pyra, but her true form, her Monado form, was Aegis 3, or Numa. So we know that Aegises can take multiple different forms. I think this may be an example of that, but for Alvis. And this is probably like a weaker state for Alvis, and then at some point, with that one fight between Alvis, Rex, Shulk, and apparently Zed's there as well, just chilling, which we'll get to later, I think the resultant of that will result in us getting this Alvis, who we'll call A. Because I believe they'll essentially be a different person, because they'll lose the memories of being Alvis. I think that's what they're going with. Now, let's roll call, everybody. Roll call. Matthew. A. Glimmer. Pyra's kid, yeah? Bear that in mind, we'll go into it later when we can actually see the core crystal. Shulk and Fiora's kid, Nicole. Shulk, Rex. And it's this point that we know it's at some point in the future, because in that one scene with Rex, Shulk, and Alvis, Rex didn't have the lost eye, Shulk's hair was shorter. And unless Rex just grows his eye back somehow, I don't think that's going to be part of the plot. That leads me to believe that the Rex, Shulk, and Alvis scene in that giant fog gate-esque area will be taking place very nearly the start of the game, probably at the very beginning. Could even be the first cutscene or one of the first cutscenes where introduced to these characters. Something happens, Rex loses an eye, Shulk grows his hair out, some time passes, and we get to this part. Xenoblade 3 Future Redeemed. This key art is freaking sweet, by the way. But there are a few things to bear note here. One, the use of lightning as imagery, that's just something to keep an eye out for. Because remember, when you're painting something like this, or when you're drawing something like this, nothing is accidental. We also have Prison Island. For those who have not played Xenoblade 1, well, go play it. 2, Prison Island was one of the key locations from that game. Kind of like how the World Tree was the final dungeon for Xenoblade 2, or Origin was the final dungeon for Xenoblade 3. Prison Island was a major focal point of the story, where a lot of the key narrative happenings happened at Prison Island. It's being brought back, and we'll see it later on as well. There are ruins over here on the far right here. Now, personally, I'm not entirely sure where to say they're from. However, the snowy environment we got here, plus the mountains, makes me believe that I want to call and predict that this may be some kind of merging between Tantal and Prison Island. Why would I say that? Well, Xenoblade 3 loves to pair an aesthetic from Xenoblade 1 with an aesthetic from Xenoblade 2, or at least a location. Erythia Sea had Aerith Sea from Xenoblade 1, but also Leftheria Sea or Leftheria Archipelago from Xenoblade 2. They love merging these two together. They had Magna Forest with, God, why am I blanking on the name of that one zone from Xenoblade 2? Mortitha, that's it. And they merged those two. They love doing that kind of stuff. So I would imagine this could be a combination of Tantal with Prison Island. I did kind of think we'd maybe see Tantal at some point, just because it was kind of like the one odd out that we just never saw. It was a very iconic location from Xenoblade 2. I'm kind of surprised they never used it. They could be using it in the DLC. We also have our main party members here. From left to right, we have Nicole, we have Glimmer, who has a spear, almost like a torch in a way. We have Matthew, who I believe is Matthew Vandam, who has 2 gauntlets, by the way. We have Rex, and we have Shulk over here as well. All facing away from the camera. Very similar in design. We just bust out my... hold on, I have the box art over here so I can look at it. Yeah, it's kind of similar to how they did Jin for Torn of the Golden Country, where Jin's facing away from the camera. That may just be something that they like to do with box art, because they also did it with Xenoblade 2. I'm pretty sure they also did it with Xenoblade 3. So they love having characters face away from the camera to have that kind of, we're looking towards something, so we can see what the character is actually looking at. They're looking at Prison Island, pretty much. We have Glimmer here. We have this freaking Min main from Smash Brothers over here. Nicole, who uses these 2 mechanical arms attached to his backpack to fight with, which is a very unique weapon style that we have not seen so far in Xenoblade 3. However, in a few seconds, at the 58-second mark, we'll see something else that's eating away at me we'll be talking about. He also has goggles. So, we expected to see 2 characters that looked exactly like this. In the Founders Room, right, there were 2 statues. House Rhodes and House Ortiz. House Rhodes seems to be Glimmer, because she looks exactly like the statue of the founder, and the story matches up. And House Ortiz seems to be Nicole. He has a giant extendo arm. We can do a bit of a punch. She has the 10-term limit mark here, like the little tattoo, the brand, whatever you want to call it. She seems to be a couple of years out from a homecoming, but this was also, again, described in the Founders Room, where we just pop on over to Xenoblade 3. See, in the Founders Room, we have these 2 characters noted here. So let's read them real quick so we can get some background information for these characters. House Rhodes. A soldier of Agnes, this founder's fight to the death against the founder of Ortiz, a soldier of Kevez, was interrupted by a chance meeting with other founders. Freed from the bondage of her flame clock, she joined the fight against Mobius. Although a soldier, the founders reported to have been exceedingly gentle and kind at heart. Additionally, his skill in the healing arts greatly contributed to the development of medical science in the city in later ages. And irrespective of starting life as an Agnian soldier, she is said to have surpassed 80 years of age, though the way she achieved that remains shrouded in mystery. So, these 2 fight, which we saw in the trailer. They fight, and is interrupted by Matthew and the founders, who recruit them to the cause. Let's just quickly read over Ortiz's here. A Kevesi soldier, this founder was released from the flame clock system by the other founders, Matthew, and henceforth spent every last ounce of his energy to the cause to liberate the city as one of the first Ouroboros, with surpassing skill in mechanical engineering, which we see him fixing Shulk's arm later on. The founder fought not with a blade, but with a weapon of his own fabrication. I kind of thought that would be like a replica Monado or something like that, but apparently it's just a giant, remember that one Switch game arms? Yeah, that. He was also responsible for laying the foundation of all the mechanical systems supporting the city to this day. Following the fight against Mobius, he poured the remainder of his days into rebuilding the city, before finally perishing at the age of 80. He lives to 80 years old, she lives beyond 80. Though how he attained that feat despite his origins as a Kevesi soldier remains unexplained. That's going to be one of the main questions going forward in the DLC, is how were those 2, Nicole and Glimmer, able to break away from the 10-term limit of being a Kevesi or an Agnian soldier? How were they able to do it? Because we couldn't even do that in the base game. So how do we somehow manage to overcome that limit? That will be probably one of the main storylines for those 2 characters at some point. Now, let's go back to the trailer. We cut back to the trailer, and you can see we're showing the fight between Nicole and Glimmer when they first met, and Matthew of Vandam is interrupting with a freaking sick Superman punch. So he comes down like freaking Iron Man here. And then, look, I gotta admit it. Did this Mobius absolutely filthy. Actually filthy. Like, right through the junk as well. Right through the booty hole. Just a clean sword strike. Just filthy. Now, I did a little bit of research, and this kind of looks like Mobius H from the Lands quest line in Xenoblade 3. But the coloring is a little bit off, but this headpiece and this circular apparatus surrounding it looks very reminiscent of Mobius H. But this, like, yellow part, like, on this underside here, looks different. So there may be some kind of, like, modification, or, like, a different use of a power. But this seems to be Mobius H, at least in design. Also, the Mobius, I want to call it a core crystal, but I don't want to call it a core crystal. This thing is also in the same location as with Mobius H.
I don't normally stoop to this.
By the way, you can actually see better here. Alvis's core crystal, the Ontos core crystal. Now, for those who don't know, the core crystals for the 3 Trinity processors, who were the 3 AIs charged with essentially controlling or regulating, I forget the exact terminology that was used, the conduit, which was this big divine device that Klaus used to split the worlds apart. They had these 3 cores, which we call the Aegis core crystals in Xenoblade 2. Alvis didn't originally have one. In the base Xenoblade 1 from the Wii, he didn't have that core crystal around his neck that he does in Definitive Edition. It was a key. However, with Definitive Edition, they changed it, retconned, whatever you want to call it, to be that core crystal that was around his neck. It was deactivated, but this one is glowing red, which we see later on is Ontos' core crystal. Which also gives more credence to believe that there's some kind of really heavy connection between Alvis and A here. Actually wrecks this Mobius. Now, this is a theory that I've seen floated about. It was also brought up in my stream chat last night, and I kind of buy it. I think she's a founder. I do kind of lean into this idea because there are 2 founders that are unaccounted for with this trailer, at least from what we know. Because the Founders Room, let's pop right on over there real quick again. The Founders Room has 7 founders. However, Rex and Shulk here aren't founders, they're the mentors to the founders. We can see it here. House Reed, in memory of the founder of House Reed and the city's Liberatrix. Rather than the founder herself, this statue depicts the founder's mentor figure, standing as a sign of the deep reverence and devotion she felt for her teacher. The founder's master was unconnected to her by bonds of blood, yet he raised her as would befit a child of one's own, it is said. Though of a calm and constant disposition, the sight of him on the battlefield, great red sword in hand, he looks badass, struck fear into many a Mobius. And though the vicious struggle against Mobius cost his ferocious warrior his right arm, which we see later on in the trailer, where he has a mechanical arm, the loss did nothing to diminish his desire to hone his martial skills each day, standing as vivid testament to his indomitable will. We do not get a description much of the actual founder of House Reed. We get it with Shulk instead. However, if we pop back on over to the trailer. Now, I have seen speculation, I believe it was also brought up in my chat as well, that it is possible that she could be Sharla's kid from Xenoblade 1. Sharla, who's a character from Xenoblade 1, she could be Sharla, maybe Ryan's kid. And that is why he treats her as he would his own child, essentially. That could be it. Her weapon's kind of interesting to look at, because it does kind of resemble the end piece of, say, one of Ryan's weapons, but I don't think it's Ryan's weapon. I think it's a sword, or some kind of, like, mix between one of his weapons with a sword, something in that regard, because there's a pretty massive hilt with this weapon here. So she's not wielding either Charlotte or Ryan's weapon. She could have a weapon all of her own, which the other kids also seemingly do, except for Mio. She shares the dual ring clasp with Nia. We also see Glimmer here as well. I believe you can see the core crystal. Yes. You can only see it for like a couple of seconds in this shot, but you can see this is Numa's core crystal. Straight up. It's the emerald green. Don't worry, console from Xenoblade 2. I remember it's emerald. Emerald green core crystal in her chest. She is almost certainly going to be Pyra's daughter. Or they could do something where this is like Pyra reborn in the world of Mobius. I don't think that's the route they're going to go. I think they're going to go the route of this is Pyra's daughter, and then Rex is going to have some kind of relationship, like a father-daughter thing, with her throughout the story, like trying to help guide her away from the life of being caught up in Agnes and Kevin's war, and bring her back her own free will and choice. I believe that's the story they're probably going to go with Glimmer here. And this seems to be one of the scenes where the founders came in to swoop in to help try and rescue them. I think Shulk could be her mentor, though. For House Reed, not Glimmer. Got my words mixed up a little bit there. I think Shulk could be the mentor to House Reed. Her. If she truly is a founder. I think that could be the route they go for there. That's Shulk. Again, he looks badass. Love the drip. And now... Gotta stop this here. Okay, this could be a lighting thing, but this does seem way darker. Also, note the coloring of the lights here. It's like this purplish glow for the character who very much resembles Nickel in design, especially in terms of the weapon. That's supposed to be unique to him, but yeah, as you see, when the light comes on and it actually reflects off him, the lighting stays the same. This is just Nickel coming to rescue of, I believe it's Glimmer. I believe it is Glimmer. Let's just take a quick look here. Yes, he's coming in to protect Glimmer. So they're definitely going to have some kind of like subplot or sub-story relating to them and how they go from enemies to at least friends or something along that line. This scene, we don't know from the trailer what the context is behind this scene, why Rex comes in to protect Glimmer, Nickel. But if we hop on over to the Twitter... I'll leave a link in the description down below for their Twitter account, but it's the Japanese Xenoblade Twitter account. They post a bunch of separate videos alongside the trailer, and we see this is one of the scenes from later on in the trailer where this Mobius has essentially fused two Feronises in this almost like half-interlinked state, and they're about to absolutely annihilate Glimmer. Nickel comes in, saves the day, protects or blocks, or is willing to at least sacrifice himself, but she looks up. Rex comes in, Chatosaurus himself. Actually, I think we gotta call him Giga Chatosaurus Rex now. Comes in with literally one hand, by the way. One sword blocks the entire beam of death that was going to annihilate everything within that general direction. Rex just comes in, absolutely no sweat off his brow, just blocks all of it like the Chad he is. And then the beam's deflected. We see her again, by the way, who I believe is one of the founders. House Reed. And then we'll see this part later on in the trailer. He says, I'll show him a thing or three, which is just absolute fan service for me in particular. Thank you, Monolith. Now, let's cut back to the actual trailer. By the way, I'll talk about the Numa story when we get there, but that is the Numa story. Now, we're back in the trailer. Oh, yes. I like your attitude, kiddo. He was willing to sacrifice himself to protect Rex's daughter. He respects that. I like your attitude, kiddo. I'll show him a thing or three, but let the Chad come into play here, yeah? Numa Sword on the way, about to absolutely deck this Mobius. And you know it. You absolutely know it. He never says, I'll show him a thing or three, and then doesn't absolutely whoop the ass. The whole ass. Not even just one cheek, the whole ass of whoever he's fighting. This is going to be a badass scene. Now, this Mobius speaks into, like, I want to say a blender that's on, because you can barely understand what he says here. I put two Feronises together. To build up my power. Then he says, whatever, I can't understand it. Maybe you can if you can, like, leave a link in his, not leave a link, but comment down below what you think this Mobius says here. Now, this Mobius, this looks like Mobius B with some modifications, particularly, like, this crown, essentially, because Mobius B had the 3 horns here that look identical to this. Also, the face right here, like, this entire region looked identical to Mobius B. However, this part was laying down on the shoulders. It wasn't up, like, furrowed that we see here. Let me pull up a picture of Mobius B. This is from the fandom page for Xenoblade 3. I'll leave a link to this in the description down below. But yeah, you can see here, you can kind of, this looks like Mobius B, at least the one from the trailer. You can see that the crown essentially is down on his shoulders here, but everything else pretty much matches the same thing with the overall body structure, which makes me think that Mobius from the trailer is Mobius B. Mobius B being the one from the Xeon side story, or side quest. He shoots out the 2 Pharaohs, and now we actually see some parts of the battle system here. Now, this actually is talked about a bit on the website, so we can just pop on over there. But before we do that, the party system here, at least, these are the characters that we know are in there. Matthew A, Nicole, Glimmer, Shulk, Rex. So the 2, essentially, the students of Shulk and Rex aren't actual characters that we play as. Same thing with Doyle. Doyle's not here. But we have Matthew A, Nicole, Glimmer, Shulk, Rex. Very similar in the combat system, pretty much everything else in regards to base Xenoblade 3. Very similar, we have the chain attack system there. We don't know exactly what that entails, but we have fusion arts, we have the 3 arts here that we normally see with Xenoblade 3. I don't think these are going to be master arts or master skills, because I don't think they're going to give us enough time to really flesh out that kind of system, so they just may be 6 stock arts for their classes. We can do fusions. You have the ultimate ability here. Whatever this is called, Gigantic Beat. AoE charge on all arts on hit. But we also, instead of having interlinks, because interlinks aren't around at this point in time, we have a special fusion-esque ability, and this is what we'll go to the website to really go in on this. Now, I haven't found an English page for this, but this is the Japanese Nintendo page for Xenoblade 3's DLC, Future Redeemed. I'll leave a link to this in the description down below. I'm using Google Translate to translate the page into English. It doesn't translate everything, but we do get the translation for the battle section down here. As with the main story of Xenoblade 3, battles where the roles of attackers, defenders, and healers, DPS, tank, healers, which differ for each character, are important. The translation is not going to be all that accurate because we're translating Japanese to English, which is never Google Translate's strong suit, let's say that generously. With special powers and cooperative attacks with friends. Or Boros power, just essentially the fusion arts that we can do. That's what that is. And then down here we have the Union combo. Tag Union of 2 characters. By cooperating with the Union, you can unleash a powerful combination attack. Abilities also improves when attacking with Union combo. Depending on the combination of unions, the attack and improved effects will also differ. I had to go to the non-translated page to actually pull up the video, but we do have a video going over those combo union attacks, which looks pretty freaking sweet. So essentially for each character, you can pair them up manually with one other character in the party, and you get a unique ability based on who you pair up. So we can pair Matthew up with A, Nicole, Glimmer, Shulk, or Rex here, and each of these abilities does different effects and have different abilities attached to them. Then with Nicole, we can pair him up with Glimmer, Shulk with Rex here, which seems to be big damage. And then you say, do you want to go with this? And then they're going to show off some of these arts here. This is the Matthew and A1. Giant slash for damage. Matthew comes in with the Superman punch. And it does some kind of effect here. Same thing with Glimmer and Nicole here. With this one we saw in the trailer. This is the Hellfire one. Boom. Giant damage. You love to see it. And then we have Shulk and Rex, which is the combo that I need. Monado Buster. Oh, yeah. Couple big slashes there. Oh, and they do a twirl attack. You'll love to see it. And the enemy just gets annihilated. You'll love to see it. So you can mix and match those different abilities there, those union abilities, for different effects that you want to mix up the gameplay. Seems like an interesting system. Let's continue on with the trailer. Now, the locations here are pretty interesting, because this looks like, to me, we're in that one section or one area where it's a mix between Magna Forest and Mortitha. That seems to be where we are. There seems to be quite a few different aesthetics here. Now, for Torna the Golden Country, the game is going to be roughly equivalent in terms of the amount of content with Torna. Torna only really had those two zones of Torna and Gormont. This seems to have quite a few more. This could also just be another little section over on the Bionis Leg, which we know is the location from the first trailer. That's possible, but it could also just be that they're exploring like little sections of the rest of Aeonios as well, going on their own little journey here. We have Rex with a launch ability. This seems to be the E-tier region because of all the snow here. But we also have this giant mountain that looks like it has a head in the landscape here, which kind of looks like Orion. I could be wrong there. Don't quote me on that one. Now we're fighting. Field of Flowers as well. Boom. Big Hellstream. That was the ability. And now this is where the trailer takes a massive tonal shift. This is where I would differentiate the trailer into the two halves that I let the video start off with. That was the first half of the trailer. We enter the second half. And the second half largely deals with the character of Nile, who we only briefly saw earlier in the destruction of the original city. And also, they're playing what I assume to be the ending theme. We have Nile here sitting in sad catgirl hours here in this one chair, where I assume to be either like a outpost of the city, or this one location from the Mechonis hand from before at night, either lit by the fireplace here. And that's going to be the story for Nile going forward with this DLC. People always kill people. Let's hop on over back to the Twitter account so we can get a brief synopsis for who Nile is as a character. Actually, their Twitter account just uses this little blurb here, so it's the same translation, I believe. We have Nile, who isn't a playable party member that we know of. And the description is Matthew's youngest sister, which we knew about because of the founder's room as well. We didn't know her name was Nile, though. She's the founder of House Doyle. In the city, she takes care of the children, and she has a kind personality. Due to a certain incident, that beginning of the trailer, she goes missing. The destruction of the original city went and kills their grandfather. She is the youngest sister to Matthew, who is the Vandom founder that we saw before. I believe he is right here. Yeah, that guy. So she goes missing at that event in the city, eventually meets back up with Nile, I assume. And if you notice, that kind personality, that trying to like hype her up as to be very upbeat and happy, you can see her smile here, not really present in the trailer. Why is that? Well, if we hop back over to the trailer, in the end, people always kill people. Look at the corpse. Look at the corpse, very particularly. This is one of the things I noticed on stream and blew a couple people's minds. This seems to be a kid that she's like holding as they're about to die. If we go back to one of those Twitter videos, this is also on the Japanese Twitter account for Xenoblade. I'll again link in the description down below for their Twitter account. It's this one, right beneath the Totally Not Alvis one. We have a 1-minute little video here. Now, the grandfather's alive, so there's clearly a flashback or one of the very first cutscenes they show before the grandfather dies. All the kids are rushing towards Nile because she's the one taking care of the kids in the city. Matthew's there as well. Gramps is looking on proud and happy. And they're just like talking about their troubles with each other to Nile, and Nile has to sort it out. Sorry. She and the kids are on very friendly terms. and she cares a lot about them. Clearly, you can just tell from the way the voice direction is handled in the scene with alongside the animations, just how this scene is taken overall. She's gonna walk off with the kids and keep them company. Matthew and the grandfather look on, happy. There's like a nice little moment in their life for them. This will probably end up being a flashback. But probably in the destruction of the city, the children die because, you know, N kills everybody, or at least as many people as he can. Probably ends up killing this kid, who I believe was one of the kids from that trailer. You can tell from the shorts. This one in particular. So the kid dies, and this essentially emotionally breaks Niall. She loses that kind of happy, upbeat personality that she had with the kids from before, and she becomes very, essentially isolated. There's no one else in this scene, by the way. This is a very deliberate cinematographic, where the wood is, choice on their part with the camera angles here. Notice the piano as well. A lot of music is in this trailer. Same thing with Glimmer's Weapon, which is essentially a modified cello. But then we have the dialogue that Niall says here. With or without Mobius, nothing will change. Niall. In the end, people always kill people. If we look at this facial expression, by the way, and we cut back here. Where is it? Where is it? Where is it? We cut back here. Could be very similar. So that pose could just be like a zoomed out from right here. And she gets teleported away, being disconnected from Niall for a time until they meet back up here. In the end, people always kill people. And now we get to the real mind screw section of this trailer. I heard about that from Melia. Zoom in on the Ontos core crystal. This is Latin, by the way. So I ran this through Google Translate. Again, Google Translate's really bad with Latin, especially. But we get something along the lines of, "Blessed is the man who finds wisdom and overflows with prudence." Now, I couldn't tell if this letter was an I or an L, but if you just change it to an L, it's who abounds in prudence. So essentially the same. This is not a misspell, by the way. This is just how it's formatted. Beatis homoque, inventis impentula, mat que affluent. I'm bad at pronouncing Latin, but that's roughly what I got out of it. I could be a little bit wrong here, but blessed is the man who finds wisdom and who abounds in prudence. Just something to bear in the back of your mind. Prudence and wisdom. Those two things especially. Okay, let's try and bang through a little bit more of the trailer here. I heard about that from Melia. A gift from Alvis, she called it. And then zooming in on the Ontos core crystal. It's possible that the gift from Alvis was actually the core crystal. Now what here, which appears to be the ruins of Colony 6 if you fully upgraded it, or at least the ruins of Colony 9, one of the two. A lot of like vegetation has overtook it. We have two groups meeting back up. We have Rex, Shulk, and that one character who's totally not the founder of Reed. Possibly, again, with them as well. Could also just be Rex's student. I don't think so. I think they're going to be someone else. We'll get to that in a minute. We have Glimmer, we have A, we have Nicole, and we have Matthew here. This is the base of operations, which is, again, the Mechonis hand from Xenoblade 1, because we can see the Mechonis fingers here. This is a very iconic visual if you played Xenoblade 1. It's one of the major locations in the entire game, which, again, seems to be being revisited here and repurposed as a base of operations for the Founders and for the Liberators of the city. Now the big one. This was the big reveal, because we didn't see Zed in the original trailer for Future Redeemed when it was just a teaser. We only saw Shulk, Rex, and Elvis here. We didn't see Zed. And the words he's speaking here are very particular and very interesting.
The Liberator's base of operations.
Is this how badly you wish to erase us? My God.
Is this how badly you wish to erase us, my God? Listen to that again.
Is this how badly you wish to erase us? My God.
He doesn't say our, he says my God. Not in the ways of my God. No, it's like my God. Elvis, right here, or whoever's controlling him, clearly does not have good intentions in mind, because some people look at this scene and view it as Zed is like teaming up with Shulk and Rex, which could be the case, but I think this is a bit of a misdirection. I think Zed only just recently came into the picture here. I think what's happening here is whoever's controlling Elvis is essentially going, you know what? Screw Mobius, screw the Liberators, screw everyone here, screw Ionios. I'm burning it all to the ground. I'm undoing everything. I'm not going to reactivate Origin. I'm just going to wipe everything out because I hate you.
My God.
Listen to the words that he says.
Badly you wish to erase us? My God.
Is this how badly you wish to erase us? Erase us. Not defeat, erase. Wipe them out. Very particular wording here. So if they're teaming up here, I think it's just out of convenience because Elvis, or whoever's controlling Elvis, is just going to wipe everyone out. Just annihilate them. But this is where I put on my little bit of a tinfoil hat, because I got an idea where this entire situation lies. But we have to go back to one of the Twitter videos. Now, note this. We'll talk about this in a second. We get a transition into this fog where we see Shulk, Rex, Zed, and Elvis here. Now, this is probably the same dialogue we got from the first initial teaser trailer. Nothing's gonna get through to him! He's a heartless machine! Pans over, Vex is over here. He's a heartless... Nothing will get over to him. Nothing will get through to him. He's a heartless machine! Not this scene, though. That seemed like a transition to anyone else. Like maybe, say, the main menu, when you click the new game button. Looks like it like fades to black and we come back into here and we just fade on into here. This may be the very first scene of the DLC and we're going to lose out on a lot of context as to what actually happened here. Because this could be the first scene and then we wake up to see, hey, or like a transition occurs and hey, they got injured here somehow, something happened here. And we'll have to, like, get the clues later on as to what happened with Elvis. And we'll just be left with A, and we won't know how we got from this Elvis to A. But they go a little bit of they throw a bit of a curveball at us. Now, they could have just said Elvis here. Of course they could. The same, looks like the exact same character that we saw from Xenoblade 1 Definitive Edition. Same outfit, same face, same hair. Should be Elvis, right? Well, he has Monado 1, which, you know, was Zanz's Monado. Wasn't actually Elvis's Monado. That was Zanza's Monado. And he also has the Zanza wings that we saw near the end of Xenoblade 1. So, why does he have that? Because those weren't Elvis's. Yeah, he says, I am Monado, but that's just more him trying to say, I am God here. You are not Zanza. But this isn't his Monado. That's Zanza's. Same thing with his wings. Those are Zanza's. And they don't give you the name here. A mysterious person who appeared before Shulk and Rex. Shulk looks like a familiar face. So, mistranslation here from Google Translate probably says something along the lines of, looks like a familiar face to Shulk. I think it's possible. I kind of predicted this in my One Theory video from a week or two ago. That what may be happening here is that there's some kind of fragment or kind of like virus inside Ontos' core crystal from Zanza, where there's like remnant information from Zanza. Because remember, the core crystals, especially the Aegis ones, contain all the data. So there could be some kind of information from Zanza's installed some kind of virus into Alvis that is taking shape here and controlling Alvis, explaining why he's acting like a machine. He's a heartless machine because it's not Alvis in control here. It's actually this virus that is dead set on wiping them all out. That could be one of the possibilities to explain why they're not just saying Alvis here. Because that's a key one. Why not just say Alvis? If this is just straight up Alvis, why not just say that? That tells me that there's something deeper going on here. And now for the tinfoil hat theory as to what may be actually happening here in this intro scene. We cut back to this scene at 1 minute 45 into the trailer. This could just be the main menu, by the way, just showing the 3 Trinity core processors. But yeah, we're zooming in on Alvis's core crystal, and bear in mind this visual right here when it's lit up, and bear in mind the surrounding visual encompassing the actual core crystal here. Now, did you see how I was also rotating? A gift from Alvis, she said. Do you see that graphic? Now, let me cut on over to something. So imagine it zoomed in on the Ontos core crystal, faded to black, and then this happens. Could this scene somehow be taking place inside the I'll just call it Ontos because I don't know how to pronounce the other one, the Ontos core crystal. Could that be what's happening here? And that this is the very first scene of the DLC, and all we get is we see Zed, we see Shulk, we see Vex, and we see Alvis up here, or who we assume to be Alvis, with Zanza's Monado and Zanza's wings against this, like, what appears to be a fog gate. It could also be that this is just coming out of the Ontos core crystal, not actually going inside it, but this is, like, all emanating from it. Could be. Because we also see there's some kind of, like, platform down here that does have a texture if you zoom in on the other trailer, like the very first one. We have now on Prison Island, a quick transition takes place. We have N fighting Matthew and A. Freaking A brought the sword to the sword fight, while Matthew just brought some good old punching. Prison Island lets loose some of these giant bright lights that also kind of seems like taking place in the shape of an organ, by the way. Just something to be on the lookout for. You can see the Makana's sword, the great sword, in the distance over here as well. Again, just something to bear in mind. This is one of my favorite scenes. Boom! Vex and blink and you'll miss her, Glimmer, doing a combo team attack on N. That, I just love that little bit of fan service. That's freaking cool. Father-daughter combo attack on N. Love that.
But now I'm glad I'm here. Glad I can choose for myself.
But now I'm glad I'm here. I'm glad I can choose for myself. A father-daughter moment where she's talking about her own little character story, where she's no longer bound by the constraints of Agnes and being caught up in that perpetual war. She's glad she can choose for herself. We also see Rex with the one lost eye, so this has to take place after this scene, because he doesn't have a lost eye here. He just doesn't. So something goes down on Prison Island. I believe this is Prison Island, where they fight N again. We don't know who ends up being victorious there. That could also just be the final fight, but I don't know if they would show that there. We have Glimmer here with, again, the Aegis core crystal, the Numa one specifically because of the coloration here. And the red hair makes me think that she's Pyra's kid, same thing alongside the fact her weapon is fire-based.
I'm glad I'm here. Glad I can choose for myself.
I'm glad I can choose for myself. And now another scene that's heartwarming. By the way, hi Riku. We also have Shulk with Nickel, who I believe, because, you know, hair color, and he kind of looks very much like Shulk. I believe Nickel is Shulk and probably Fiora's kid. So, he was caught up being a soldier of Kevis, broke loose, and now they started to form a relationship between father and son. He, as an expert engineer, is fixing Shulk's mechanical arm for his father, and he's looking on happy and proud that he's finally able to share this moment. By the way, I talked about this on stream last night. I will be slightly disappointed if one of two things doesn't happen here. At some point in the DLC, I need Shulk to shoot this entire arm off like a homing rocket, or go full Iron Man and have this little central thing on this palm shoot laser beams. I need one of those two possibilities to occur. It's not a want, it's not a desire, it's a need. By the way, hi Riku. Shulk and Nickel fighting on Prison Island as well. Again, we have the father-son and father-daughter combo attacks here. He's protecting Nickel, who has his back. Then we have this one scene with A, who's one of the really only scenes we get of it. We don't actually get that many scenes of A in this trailer. We actually don't. It's a shockingly little amount. And we can actually really see again, I'm going to call it Ontos. I think it's Oasia, but I don't know how to pronounce that correctly. We have the core crystal here on her ear, or on their ear, as an earring, essentially. Spouting a bit of philosophy. Even had they built the perfect world for themselves. Humans by design look beyond. Or are designed beyond. Essentially, she's saying, even if you give humanity the perfect world, they will look beyond that. They will want something greater. And they're also showing Klaus here. This is a big deal for me because, if you recall, in the base game, when they explained the two worlds separating, they never even mentioned Klaus. They just said, so in a distant past, split the worlds in two. And now, those worlds are colliding and we got Ionios. That was essentially the TLDR that they gave. They never really went into it like they did with Xenoblade 1 or 2. But they are here. So that is very interesting. Why are they going into detail about Klaus now when they did it in the base game? And they're also kind of showing, hey, humanity, even if they have the perfect world, will want something greater. They'll want something more. Again, now, the big one. This is why Nile is the second character I'm really interested in. Two characters I'm really keeping my eye out for here. A and Nile. And this is the reason why. Because we see the Ontos core crystal no longer on A's ear, but in the chest of Doyle or Nile. And bear in mind also, we see this Xenoblade 1 Monado-esque architecture design here as essentially wings for Doyle here, who's doing a bit of a Persona 5 cosplay with this mask going on. Matthew, always in Fantasyland. Now, that is a scene that really intrigues me, because if I didn't have the Founder's Room, I would say, oh, this may be A combining with Nile to form Mobius A. But that's not the case. Because we saw in the Founder's Room that she sticks around to be essentially the legislative head of the city. So what does this scene mean? By the way, little interesting side bit. Yeah, this is very big and flashy. Why does she have the core crystal for Ontos? Why does she have this new suit of armor? What's going on here? I'm looking at the background. Those who don't remember the background, let me show you a little something. We cut back to that teaser trailer from before.
Is this really what you want?
Tell me, why is this really what you want? That's what I'm talking about when we see the floor here. There's some kind of texture here. It looks like Origin to me.
He's a heartless machine.
He's a heartless machine. We see the core crystal glowing here. We see the core crystal here for Ontos, so we know it's in 3 locations throughout this DLC at some point. Around the neck of Alvis, on the ear of A, and then on the chest of Nile. At some point, that's the journey of the Ontos core crystal. And we cut back over to this panning shot of the Bionis leg from Xenoblade 1, which is at island in the northwest of Ionios from Xenoblade 3, which we just never went to. Look at this wall and there's like architecture down here. Looks kind of similar, don't it? Like killing Granddad wasn't enough for you. Do you see the wall here? There's like stony cliff and like this architecture right here. Come back to the other trailer. Looks very similar, don't it? Don't it? Very, very, very similar. So, and it seems like the same time of day, so I think those 2 scenes essentially take place at the same time. Or at least in the same scene. So, one of the reasons I could see this happening is because in the Founder's Room, for the statue of Vandam here, House Vandam, the original incarnation of the city, was once laid to ruin by Mobius N's hand, which we saw at the beginning of the trailer. The founder realized fully the power of Ouroboros, heretofore limited, and fought against N, ousting him. Realized fully the power of Ouroboros. That screams to me interlink as a mechanic. Because we don't interlink before that point, really, I believe. Once victorious, so he wins this fight. He wins it. And another reason I think he's interlinking here is because look at this. Killing Granddad wasn't enough for you, and we see the interlink starting to form here. But, again, I said before, when this teaser came out, this was shot in a very specific way, and the reason I think is because I think she's just right off screen. Like, to the right, or, like, right behind Matthew here. Because I think what happens here is that in order to Ouroboros, you need a deep connection with the other person, but also you need one of each iris, the Agnian and Kavesi iris. And in the Founder's Room, Matthew is on the side of Agnes. He also has the Agnian iris, while Doyle, or Nile, is on the side over here with Kavesi. So she probably has the Kavesi iris. So the formula for having a deep connection will probably be Matthew with A, but to get the irises, you need Matthew with Doyle. So what probably happens is that A maybe sacrifices themselves, maybe not, or they just fuse for a bit with Doyle, so that we get this form of Nile, who now, because of A, has the deep connection with Matthew, because again, they were separated for a time, so maybe Matthew and Nile couldn't interlink by themselves. Maybe they tried, but they couldn't manage it, or whatever the reason is. So they had to, so these two had to fuse here, so that they could interlink with Matthew here, Vandam, to interlink to defeat N, like as was said in the Founder's Room. The Founder realized fully the power of Ouroboros, heretofore limited, and fought against N, ousting him. Once victorious, he gathered the old city's people, scattered to the winds, and re-established the city. With the city restored, he left its government in the hands of the founder of Doyle. So, Doyle, or Nile, isn't the bad guy. Vandam or Matthew still trusts her enough, despite what's happening in that scene, to leave the city in the hands of Doyle, and then Vandam Matthew departs on a lonely expedition. No records exist of his fate thereafter. Heirs of Vandam's lineage only return to the new city several centuries later. Oral tradition has it that the founder was master of the classical art of fist-fighting, and the scions of House Vandam carry on the custom to this day. So, what do we know? He realizes the power of Ouroboros fully, which I believe means interlinking, because we saw it in the trailer, or at least the teaser trailer. They oust N, giving them a foothold to establish the new city here, who Nicole is able to make all the machines for, and those parts. She leads it legislatively, as is said familiar relationship. Elder of the Two brought the power of Ouroboros to completion. Who brought the power of Ouroboros to completion? So they even say right there, Doyle with Matthew there. City who have been bred and wise has found to lay the cornerstones for much of the city's governance and legal system. So while he screwed off on his lonely expedition, she stayed behind to essentially create the governing body of the city. Her whereabouts were lost at the end's ravaging of the city of old, which was that beginning scene where she probably teleports away with a lot of the other city people, but upon encountering the other founders, she committed herself fully to the fight, but she's not a party member. So she's not a fighter. So maybe that's why she couldn't merge with Matthew to begin with, because she just wasn't a fighter. So she didn't have that experience in order to activate the interlink. But if she fused with A and took that core crystal into herself in order to do that, then she probably could, because they would have the fighting experience of A alongside A's connection with Matthew, but also Doyle's connection to Matthew, but also the other Iris. So I think that could be what's happening there. Now, as to this lonely expedition they keep talking about for Vandom here. That may or may not be elaborated in the DLC. There could be like an epilogue, or they could just pull an Adam. Where, like, at the end of Xenoblade 2, Torn to the Golden Country, what happened with Adam was, we knew he essentially put Mithra or Pyra to rest, locked it down in the ship in the Cloud Sea's floor, and then went off to do his own thing. We never really found out what that was, and we didn't even do that in the DLC. He just walks off, never to be seen from again. They could be doing something similar for Noah here. Not Noah, but Matthew. We kick back here.
Humans yet desire the beyond. Matthew. Always in Fantasyland.
Matthew always in Fantasyland. Matthew doesn't like what's happening here. Look at his face. This is not jubilation. This is not happiness. This is like shock and a little bit of anger, possibly. Like he doesn't know what's going on. Which makes me think A and Niall fused here, so he doesn't know the fate of A. He doesn't know what or who this is right now in front of him. His sister or A or something else. Probably doesn't know. That is what makes sense to me. But there's one last piece of this trailer to analyze. That is this song that is playing here. I transcribed it the best I could. So I'm gonna let the song play when we get to this bit over here, and I'll just talk over it. You're standing at a loss, in front of a door that's been closed for so long. With your foreseeing eyes.
I heard about that from Melia. A gift from
For so long.
This it.
With your foreseeing eyes, what do you see?
Is this how badly you wish to erase us? My God.
Until you open it, you cannot know. Afraid to see
But now I'm glad I'm here. Glad I can
what could be on the other side.
just knowing who I
Oh, can't you see
That's the biggest thing.
how much I feel the same as you?
Perfect world for themselves.
It seems,
Humans yet desire the beyond. Matthew.
it seems we just need to let them all go away. I've seen that look before. The stare of your fearful looking eyes. I'm pretty sure that's going to be like the finale song, like the Where We Belong for this game, or the A Moment of Eternity. I'm pretty sure that's what this song's going to be, and it sounds amazing. Oh my god, I love the song. So I'm just going to read it now from start to finish from what we saw. I'll tell you the one bit of the translation I had kind of difficulty with, so they may be a bit wrong. You're standing at a loss in front of a door that's been closed for so long. With your foreseeing eyes, what do you see? Until you open it, you cannot know. Afraid to see what could be on the other side. Oh, can't you see how much I feel the same as you? It seems we just need, and this is the part that I kind of maybe messed up, to let them all go away. Because you have Niall here saying Matthew, and it's really hard to actually hear the words there. Because she's talking over it. I think it says, oh, can't you see how much I feel the same as you? It seems we just need to let them all go away. And then you have the finale bit with the name of the DLC here. I've seen that look before, the stare of your fearful looking eyes. And the song's ramping up there. So the song seems to be one person singing to another. I'd be willing to bet it's either from the perspective of A or Niall probably talking to Matthew here. You're standing at a loss in front of a door that's been closed for so long. Not having access to the future. With your foreseeing eyes, what do you see? Until you open it, you cannot know. Until you walk into the future, you do not know what lies beyond that door. Afraid to see what could be on the other side. You are afraid of knowing what could befall the future, what could happen there. Because it's a mystery, it's a question mark. We don't know. Oh, can't you see how much I feel the same as you? I don't want us to part. We just need to let them all go away. I've seen that look before. The stare of your fearful looking eyes. And then the song cuts off for the trailer. This song could, again, Xenoblade has a really high likability for transcribing some kind of story through the music and through the songs. Moment of Eternity was Laura's perspective, trying to serenade Jin to walk on to the future, not beholden to the past, let it remain there. One Last Year was the song of Pyra and Mithra singing out, crying out to clouds to bring them back, to give them some more life. Where It Belonged felt to me like a song between N and M, Noah and Mio, talking about each other, saying that we will meet again. We have to part for now. We don't want to part, but we have to for the good of the world and to be able to step into the future. This song seems to be tackling the fear of moving into the future and the fear of opening that door and walking on through, finding out what lies beyond it. So we will see. I imagine the song's probably going to be playing near the ending. I think I'm still on the money with the ending, what's going to happen in the DLC at the end. I think what will happen is they defeat N, found the city, and then we'll get some kind of like panning shot, kind of like the beginning of Xenoblade 1 with the panning shot along the entirety of the Bionis. Probably a panning shot through time and the events of Xenoblade 3, just a brief recap of them, with this song playing in the background, culminating in the very end of Xenoblade 3 with us activating Origin and ending Ionios, and then we'll get the post-credit scene from Mio's perspective. I imagine that's what's going to happen. That's what I think is going to happen, at least in my opinion. Could be wrong, but that's the fun of theory crafting. We just don't know, but it's fun trying to put all these pieces of the puzzle together. So yeah, that's my analysis for Xenoblade Chronicles 3 Future Redeems trailer. We have less than 1 week until the DLC actually releases. So until then, I'll be making a few videos about intermediate parts, about specific characters, where the story could go, what more could we learn about them, what could happen here. I'll also be defending your fan theories for what may happen in the DLC, so leave them in the comments down below if you want me to defend them in a future video within the next week before the DLC comes out. We'll be covering the DLC extensively on the channel, so please, if you like this video and you want to see more content like it, please leave a like and subscribe. It really helps the channel out and helps support future content, and I greatly appreciate it. And hit the bell icon to be notified when I upload and stream in the future, because we're going to be like talking about this on stream, going back and forth, just like trying to break down whatever we can about this DLC and the other information we have on the website and the Twitter account, just finding out more that we can find out. It's going to be a lot of fun. Hope you all stick around, because we got some Xenoblade to talk about, people. Let's redeem this future. Hey! And you know I have to play as Chatosaurus Rex. You know I gotta do it. So, thank you all for tuning in. Stay safe, everybody. Have a great day. Go play some video games if you can. And as always, I'll see you all next time. Bye-bye, everybody.